Councillor Potter, we're now live. If you'd like to start the meeting, if you just work your way through the agenda and officers will speak when it's their turn to speak.
Oops, okay then, yeah. Bearing in mind I've never done this before, if I make any sort of hiccups, can someone just sort of come in and tell me? I won't get the hump. First of all, item number 1, apologies for absence. I think we're 2 councillors short, but I haven't received any apologies. Am I right in saying we haven't got Councillor Spillman and we haven't got Councillor Rice? Is that about right?
That's correct. No apologies received, Councillor.
Right. So there's only three councillors, isn't there, tonight? It's going to be myself, Councillor Collins, and Councillor Kathy Kent.
That's correct. Yes, we can.
Okay. We'll moving on to the minutes then. To approve as a correct record of the minutes of the previous meeting on the 24th of November 2020. You can find those minutes on pages 5 to 14. Are we all in agreement with those minutes?
Agreed.
Yeah, and I agree.
Okay, Councillor, thank you.
Yeah, we're all okay. I haven't received any items of urgent business. Have you, Jenny?
No urgent items you've received, Councillor.
Right then, so that takes us on to item number 4, declarations of interest. I haven't got any to declare.
Neither have I, Councillor. Councillor Potter,
Thank you.
Councillor Gary Collins.
Take that across the board. No declarations.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah. Okay, well, moving on then to item number 5. It's the external audit plan 2020 to 2021, which can be found commencing on page 15. I'll just get to that. Let's have a quick look. And this is the report of Sean Clark. So are you happy to commence the report, Sean?
Hi, Chair. It's Jonathan Wilson. I'll pick it up for Sean, this one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So we've got 2 external audit reports tonight. We've got the audit plan now, and we're followed by the annual audit letter, and that's 2 of the 3 major reports they bring to the committee every year. So we have the audit planning report, which they're about to present, the audit completion report, and the annual audit letter. This one is setting the scene for this year's audit. And basically it sets out two key things. It sets out the planned work on the financial statements audit, and it sets out the planned work on the use of resources assessment that goes alongside that. The thing just to note from my point of view before I let BDO take you through the report is that the work on use of resources is changing this year, but it's still in progress, and the final approach hasn't yet been agreed. But I'm sure Matthew will take you through some of the changes that we know to date. It also sets out the fee plan for the current year, and the fee is very much in line with the previous year. And then in terms of the audit risk, it sets out a number of risks. And within our covering report, we've responded to all those risks. And I just note they're common risks that are largely raised year on year at most authorities. And a lot of them are what we would call inherent risks, where there's not necessarily anything specific that's happened, but they just remain an underlying risk at all authorities. But again, I'll let Matthew take you through some of the detail of that. And happy to take any questions once Matthew's finished. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll go through sort of some of the headlines of this report then. So I'm on the whole going to take this report as read, and I'm just going to highlight a few key points on it. So the first thing I want to raise, which is on page 22 of the reporting pack, is our materiality figure. So our materiality, or our draft materiality, is 7,815,000 for the group, 7.8 million for Thurrock Council. That is at the moment in line with the prior year. The point I'd highlight here is that that will be adjusted on receipt of the draft financial statements for audit. So for the moment, for the purposes of planning, we are using the prior year figure. Our risks are listed out on page 24. The key thing to note here is that all the risks are the same risks that were raised as last year. There's nothing new in the report compared to last year. The one change we've made is that the valuation of financial instruments, which was raised as a normal risk last year, has been increased to a significant risk this year, which is due to a greater amount of focus that we plan to put on that area this year. On the subsequent pages, we set out our fees, our sort of overview of the key scope of the audit. Then we go through sort of each of the risks one by one to provide a bit more detail. As mentioned earlier, I'm going to take all this as read, and I'm not planning to go through this in any great detail. On page 39, we've got a confirmation that we are not aware of any fraud at this moment in time. I believe there's a report later in this committee from the counter fraud specialist, so there's nothing we're aware of other than what might be raised within that. That's coming later on. On pages 40 and 42, we've set out two new auditing standards which are applicable from this year. The first in respect of going concern, the second in respect of accounting estimates, both of which are going to involve us needing to perform more work this year than what we've done in the past. We've already had early discussions with the council in respect of both of them, and we should be in a good position to be able to complete that work without too many difficulties. Well, without any difficulties, I should say. And otherwise, on page 45, we've confirmed that there are no independence issues of which we're aware. We did last year report one independence issue to this committee relating to an employee we have who has a close family member employed by the council. We can confirm that employee is no longer employed by BDO, and this is not an issue going forward. And the rest of the report is largely for information only. I'm going to take it as read, and I'm happy to take any questions on the report at that point.
Okay, thank you very much for that report. I'm guessing a lot of the stuff will be affected by the COVID pandemic. So I haven't really got any questions to ask. I've read it, reasonably thoroughly and understood it as much as I could, given that I'm not a chartered accountant. Has anyone else got any specific questions relating to that report they would like to put forward?
No hands up, Chair. Oh, sorry, Councillor Collins has got his hand up.
Yeah, it's just on page 17 of the report, on point 2.6. So the proposed audit fees are set out in Appendix A. The planned fee for the main audit and VFM conclusion is £107,967. Then if you go down to section 3, issues, options and analysis of options, it says the report is only for nothing, as it is the report of the external auditors. Now, I'm quite willing to offer my services to write a report for nothing if I get paid around 7,000. What precisely does this mean then? It's just for information, please?
Sorry, Councillor, I'm just trying to follow up with your page numbering. So could you just highlight that again? Which page you were on?
Page 17.
Yeah.
Section 2.6, which gives us the 107,967.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you drop down to 3.1. It said the report is only for nothing. And excuse me.
I think that's only for noting. Sorry, Councillor. It should say the report is only for noting.
I must admit, I was a bit confused with that. I misunderstood it. The report is only for nothing.
Yeah.
It was, irrelevant.
Yeah,
but sorry about that. Yeah, bit of a typo.
No. If external audit had written that, we might be able to hold them to it, but unfortunately not. No, apologies for that. That it should say for noting. So the fee is 107,967 as stated.
Okay,
Oh,
Ted,
sorry.
did you want to go to the recommendations of the report?
Yeah, are we prepared to go with the recommendation for that particular report? I'm in favour of going with that. So that's a yes from me.
Agreed. Councillor Collins, agreed.
Agreed, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to make a note that was agreed as per the recommendation. So are we okay now to move on to item number 6?
We are, Councillor. Yeah, please.
Yeah, the Thurrock annual audit letter, which can be found on page 57 through to 66. I'm just catching up a little bit here, page 57. And this is the report of Sean Clark. So are we ready to listen to Sean's report? Thank you.
It's me again, Chair. It's Jonathan again.
No problem.
So, as I said, this is the third of the 3 reports we get from audit every year, and this is a look back. This one, so the previous one was a look forward. And really, there's not too much to say, Chair, on this, other than this report summarises the work that's been undertaken on the 1920 audit, and most of which was largely reported through the previous audit committee in November. So the audit completion report that the audit brought to that meeting went through the detail which is now summarised in this report. What it does do is give a brief update on the fee position and just puts in a more summarised form those findings for external stakeholders to absorb as they see fit. So, but I will pass over to Lisa. Lisa will just run you through the appendix. And again, any questions we're happy to answer at the end.
Thank you, Jonathan. There isn't much more to say than Jonathan has said, really. This report is a public-facing summary of all of the things we've reported to you during the course of the audit of the 2019-20 financial year. There should be absolutely no surprises in this report because, as I say, it is a summary. The one thing I would bring to your attention is that, you know, the outcome, so that the executive summary on the very first page, I'll just look at the right pack page number, is 62 of your pack, just confirms there that you had unqualified opinion on your financial statements and an unmodified conclusion on use of resources, and that is the best position that you can have. So that's good news. The emphasis of matter, just to reiterate, is not a modification of your opinion. It's not a qualification. It was just put in your opinion to draw the readers of the accounts' attention to the fact that COVID-19 had caused some concerns amongst the valuation community about how much reliance could be placed on the valuations they made at the end of that financial year. So that was just drawing attention of the readers of the accounts to a particular matter specific to that year. If I could just take you to the reporting and fees summary on page 69, the only 2 things to mention there is it says under the small note number 1 that the fee variation of £5,000 requires approval of PSAA, and it's just to confirm to members that we have received that approval from PSAA for that £5,000. And on the housing benefit subsidy claim, there's a TBC there, and it says that we are unable to conclude the final fee. It's just to let you all know that we have completed that work now. It's subject to my review, and so we're close to getting that final position, and we will report that particular number to you in the next report that we bring to the committee. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks very much for your report. Has any of the councillors got any questions regarding this report?
Got Councillor Collins and then Councillor Kent, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask Lisa a question, just to clarify a little more of the reporting and fees on page 69 of the pack, the additional fees. Can you give us a little more clarification on what this group of companies are? It says the additional fee for 2019-20 has been agreed as recurring fees of £5,000, which relate to consolidation of the group companies into the council's accounts, the fee for which was not included in the scale fee. What are these group companies which are consolidated into the council's accounts, please?
So, Jonathan may want to comment on this, but you have two subsidiaries, wholly owned subsidiaries of the council, Thurrock, if I get the names right, Thurrock Regeneration Limited and Thurrock Regeneration Housing Limited, just to get them right. And the accounts, because they're wholly owned subsidiaries of the council consolidates the transactions and the accounts of those two companies into its own group accounts. So we do a piece of work that's called the group consolidation work as part of our audit to make sure that that consolidation process is accurate, is materially accurate, and that's what that £5,000 fee relates to. The reason it isn't in the PSAA scale fee and is an additional fee effectively is not because there's a problem with what the council has done under that group consolidation. It's simply because those companies didn't exist when that scale fee was originally devised. So it's work that we now have to do that we didn't used to have to do because those are new companies to the council. So it's an additional scope piece of work rather than extra fee because there was a problem.
Can you give us an idea of how much money or turnover both these companies generate per year, please?
Jonathan, I don't know if you have that information.
I haven't got the figures in front of me, Councillor Collins, but the rental stream is largely the source of finance for Thurrock Regeneration Housing Limited. So which largely is the St Chad's housing development, the rental streams from those properties, which is, I think, from memory, about 102 houses of various sizes. So it's the rental income for them. And the Regen company itself is the builder of the property. So largely it's about the construction of the property in those companies. And that housing in this case was then passed over to Thurrock Regeneration Housing Limited, where the income accrues there. So if that's sufficient background, if you'd like the exact numbers, I can email you after the meeting if you'd like a bit more detail.
Okay, thanks very much, Jonathan. No further questions.
Councillor Kent, would you like to ask your questions now, please? I think you're on mute, Councillor Kent.
Sorry, sorry, I must have double clicked on it, so apologies. Page 67 on financial statements, valuation of pensions liability. The paragraph, it said the valuation of the pensions liability is a significant risk as it involves a high degree of estimation uncertainty. I was struggling, I didn't actually understand what you were saying there, and I wondered if someone could explain that in layman terms, please.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that, Councillor Kent. So the valuation of the pension liability, what that means is it's dependent on a number of assumptions that will be made by the actuary that makes that valuation. So when we think about how accurate a valuation might be, we think about what the assumptions are that that valuation is based on and how much movement might need to happen in those assumptions to make that valuation materially incorrect. So if we think that an assumption is particularly sensitive, we usually say that it has a high degree of estimation uncertainty. And what that means is that a very small change in that one assumption could make a material change in the value that gets generated from the calculation that uses those assumptions. So it's just trying to highlight that this particular figure is subject to a number of judgments that are made by an expert, an actuary, but a very small change in those assumptions could create a major difference in what's reported in your accounts. So that means we have to look at those assumptions with a finer tuning than we might if it didn't have a high degree of estimation uncertainty.
Okay. I do have another question, but I noticed that Sean's got his hand raised, so I didn't know if Sean wants to come in first. I don't know.
If it's okay with you, Chair, I think just to give some comfort, Councillor Kent, this is the pension fund balance that's provided by Essex County Council and the actuaries. It has no impact on our bottom line in terms of reserves, which is where we normally try and measure things available for members. This is effectively, it comes into our balance sheet in one part and comes out in another. And then there are triennial valuations which determine how much the council needs to contribute towards the future pensions and clearing any deficits that there might be on the fund. So there is no impact, even if there were changes on this, there's no immediate impact on the council's bottom line in terms of reserves available, etc. Okay,
thank you. Chair, is it okay if I ask my other question, please?
Yeah, go on.
Thank you. It's just going on to page 68 of the report, use of resources. It's where the council will need to deliver its savings and achieve income targets to maintain financial sustainability in the medium term, and there is a risk that these projections will not be met. And then the bottom paragraph under the results column, I was just wondering if they've come any closer to closing the budget gap for 22, 23, 23, 24. What work has been undertaken?
Chair, if I may, I'll come into that one. So all directorates are currently reviewing all of the services that they carry out at the moment in terms of how they carry them out, in terms of the assets they use, in terms of any new technology that they might be able to use to streamline costs, etc. We were clear within the MTFS and the corporate overview and scrutiny and in the budget papers that we will look at a number of areas, including overall staffing levels, including the assets we use as key examples, and we're going through that process. We are aiming to bring a report to Cabinet in June that's with the new administration, whatever administration that may be after the May elections, to Cabinet then to set out proposals. We will then look to go through the overview and scrutiny committees in June and July to make final determinations of budget approaches by the end of July. That gives us then several months to carry out other relevant consultation, public consultation where it's necessary, etc., as well as it then being able to implement any changes we required. So currently we are actively working on how we are going to achieve that, but that's the timetable that we are currently drafting out.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, has anyone got any other questions or clarification requests?
There's no hands up, Chair, so if you go to the recommendations, perhaps?
Yeah, the recommendation is that the Standards and Audit Committee consider the comments of our external auditors as set out in the attached report and note their findings. Can we confirm that we've done that and we've understood what's been said?
Yeah, noted, Councillor Collins.
Thank you.
Noted, Councillor.
Thank you. Right then, so actually, before we move on to Agenda 7, just in case people are getting confused, on the agenda index, it says that agenda number 7 is going to start at page 67 and end at 118. Well, I don't know about everyone else, but on my one, that's not the case. Agenda 7 is actually starting on page 71. Can we all confirm we're on the right page and it's some sort of misprint?
Confirmed, Chair.
Confirmed,
okay.
Chair.
Yeah, just in case people got a little bit confused there. And agenda number 7 then is the mid-year complaints and inquiries report, and the mid-year is, or the half year is April 2020 to September 2020, and that is going to be the report of Lee Henley. So we'll welcome Lee Henley to hand us his report. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. I will present the high-level summary of this report, and I'll be happy to take any questions at the end. So as the chair said, this is our mid-year complaints report for April 20 to September 20. In terms of complaint volumes, 520 complaints were received in the reporting period. This represents fewer complaints compared to the same period last year, where 639 complaints were received. In relation to complaints performance, 88% of our complaints were responded to within our timeframes. This is slightly below our target of 90%, but it does represent an improved performance compared to last year, where 86% of complaints met the timeframe. Another key measure is the percentage of complaints that are upheld. Lower, the better. So this report shows that 32% of complaints were upheld. Last year, 41% were upheld, so this is a significant improvement. In terms of the analysis and learning, this detail is shown within Appendix 1 on page 83. So Appendix 1 provides information on our top 10 complaint areas and then provides information on learning. Appendix 2 on page 89 and Appendix 3 on page 99 provides our complaint dashboards for adult social care and children's social care complaints. Both these areas have separate statutory processes that we need to follow. And learning from complaints is also included with those dashboards. In relation to members' inquiries, this reporting period is showing an increase in inquiries compared to the previous year. So where possible, we need our members to become our digital champions and encourage our residents to use some of our online reporting facilities. So at the point our residents use those online reporting facilities, they should receive a swifter response from the council because their issue is going straight into the relevant service area, as opposed to numerous emails going to and from members as part of the members' inquiries process. And finally, in relation to Appendix 4, this has been produced following on from the Housing Ombudsman, who recently produced a new complaints handling code. And as part of that complaints handling code, the council had to complete what we call a self-assessment that demonstrates how far it complies with that complaints handling code. So that self-assessment is shown within Appendix 4. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I was just looking at the recommendations. Members to encourage residents to report where possible their concerns by using the online reporting facilities. A lot of the complaints I get as a member, and I'm sure other councillors are in the same boat, is where residents have gone to the initial stage and done an online complaint, but are not happy with the response. And just lately that has increased somewhat. I'm just guessing it's because a lot of the officers perhaps are working from home and can't interact as well. I'm just hoping we can fix that so that, I don't know about other councillors, but my main priority really is residents, and I hope we can make that a firm footing for future. Thank you.
Councillor Collins, would you like to ask your question?
Oh yes, please. I was pausing just because I thought there was going to be some sort of reply. Not to worry though.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Potter. I was on mute. In terms of officers not happy with a complaint they submit online, that's different to what we're trying to achieve here. So most about 99% of our complaints come via our digital channels in terms of complaints. What I was referring to in terms of members' inquiries was, so that's not a complaint. That's where a resident wants to raise an issue. So it could be to report a fault, to report a street light out. So what I was trying to get at was, as opposed to that coming through members' inquiries, so residents can do that online themselves, and it's swifter and quicker for them. And if they did it that way, they'll receive, acknowledgements of progress and progress updates, and it's generally a quicker process. So that's the point I was trying to make now. But complaints, most of the complaints come online anyway, and if residents are not unhappy, then that will be escalated as part of our complaints process.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Is it my turn now?
Yes, please,
Yeah.
Councillor Collins.
Chair, thank you very much. Yeah, first of all, congratulations on getting 52 compliments, which is nice. It outstripped the complaints. I will go back to this bit about no members' inquiries being used. It is nice to have people report directly. However, we do tend to be the first port of call for a lot of people who are concerned, and it's just as easy for us to raise the complaint ourselves. I've had a couple of concerns and about complaints being put in or cries for help put in, and nothing gets done for over a month, and we have to chase. Not necessarily getting at the council officers involved. I'm just wondering that this working from home is impacting on the efficiency of the systems we had in place before COVID, and how long, or do we have any idea of when it will be able to get back to normal and we start working in the offices again, please?
So in terms of, I mean, I'm probably not the best person to firm up on a date in terms of returning back to normal office working, councillor. But in terms of, so back to my original point about if we encourage our residents to report issues online, and if they're unhappy with how that process has worked, then members are always there as an escalation point, and then we would then have to log that concern as a member's complaint or a member's inquiry. So that's what we're trying to drive forward in terms of using the digital channels, but members will always be there as an escalation point to assist their residents.
I'd just like to say, Lee, you run a great unit and a team, and I've got no complaint against the way you run things. But this week I've had 2 cases which had proper complaint numbers, and they've been waiting for over a month for reply. And we finally get back. I chase, and we finally get back, and they say, "Oh yes, we can't find the reply. We'll get back to you. They've had a whole month to sort out the inquiry or the complaint, and nothing's been done. And I'm just wondering if this working from home has an impact on the efficiency of the running of the system. Have we had any performance reviews on that, please?
No, to be honest, Councillor Collins, I mean, I've not seen any of that. I mean, we should not be taking a month to respond to complaints. So if you wanted to send those to me, then I can look at that. We've got clear complaints deadlines of, stage 1 is 7 working days and stage 2 is 15. So I'm not sure if they're complaints or not. So we do get some members' inquiries whereby, they may go over our timeframes as well. But we do our best to chase those and respond to members within our timeframes of 7 days as well for members' inquiries. But happy for you to send those to me and I can look at any delays for you.
Thank you, Lee. No further questions, Chair.
Sean, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just very briefly on the question about when people will be coming back to the office. I think there's 2 distinct answers to that. The first one is we're obviously still waiting on the whole of the lockdown rollout to go through, and further advice that comes from the National Public Health Service, but our own Public Health Director and so on as well. But I think we need to also go back to the time before any of us had ever heard of COVID, which was that we were always looking to reduce down the size of the offices. We started that as a process several years ago, and we were moving on to another stage now about basically shrinking the size and creating more and more people working from home, albeit not for 5 days a week necessarily, but certainly more often. So I don't think we can just say that because of COVID, everyone's working at home. It was a direction of travel anyway. And when we're past the worst of all of this now, and hopefully we are and are getting there now, it's not going to return back to how it had been. It's just accelerated, if you like, that direction of travel.
Lisa Laybourne, would you like to ask your question, please?
Yeah, I was just noting that on the compensation section, that all the compensations paid out are all at Ombudsman level. And I was just wondering if there was a cost to the Ombudsman reviewing the cases over and above what's been paid in terms of financial remedy here, and whether we ever offer financial remedy before it gets to that stage.
Hi, Lisa. Yeah, yes, we do, but not in terms of offering remedies prior to Ombudsman. Yes, that frequently happens with the authority, but not unfortunately within this 6-month period. But you know, in terms of stage 3 independent complaints that my team undertake, we've often recommended compensation payments, but just not for this 6-month period.
Chair, there's no more hands up. If you'd like to perhaps go to the recommendations.
Okay, this recommendation is concerning the mid-year complaints and inquiries report, April 2020 to September 2020, and the recommendations are to note the statistics and performance of the reporting period, and also for members to encourage residents to report where possible their concerns by using our online reporting facilities. I'm in agreement with recommending that. How about the others?
Yeah, no, recommended. Yeah, noted. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Collins.
Thank you.
Yeah, recommended, Chair. Can I just mention something though, Chair? Sorry.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, it's just on the protocol. It's just Councillor Collins on the protocol. I don't want it just sort of section 2 does sort of say that councillors should be visible, and I just didn't want you to get yourself into any sort of trouble by not being visible on the screen as it's being recorded, and I don't know if it's being live streamed. I didn't know I didn't know if you was aware of it, and I just wanted to just make sure that everything's being done the right way, if that makes sense.
My God, he's got a tie on and I haven't.
Okay, Councillor, if you want to move on to item 8.
Yeah, just a quick interjection. I've just had a message from Councillor Rice. He's had massive problems with his internet connection, so he won't be able to join us tonight. So I thought I'd put that in. And before we move on to item 8 on the agenda, I just want to just to clarify once again, we've got the problem, I think, with the index, in case anyone's following this at home and they're getting confused. On the index, it says that agenda number 8 will commence on page 119. Well, that's not the case. On mine, it's going to commence on page 123 and finish at page 128 as opposed to 124. So as long as we're all okay with that, and we're on, so agenda item number 8 is going to commence on page 123. Are we all okay with that?
Chair, I do apologise. It must have been the merging of the agenda, but each item's now going to be 3 pages behind. So.
Oh right, okay then. That saved me keep.
Yeah, that goes through the whole of the agenda. Apologies for that.
Okay. Okay then, right.
Could I say something, Chair, before we start? The reason I take myself off the camera is that in past meetings we've had an awful lot of difficulties in communicating. The signal breaking up is bandwidth. It's not modesty or anything anything to do with anything nefarious. It's just to try and save the bandwidth. And we normally only have one person who's talking on the screen. That's how we've done it before. But I'm quite happy to sit here and smile into the camera if you'd like me to. Thank you.
That's okay. I remember saying someone telling me that the video takes up a lot more bandwidth than the audio, so I know exactly what you're saying. Right then, so we're going to move on now to item number 8, and this is the Counter Fraud and Investigation Quarterly Update, 3rd quarter, and this is a report of Michael Deneen. So we're ready to hear your report, Michael. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be taking this one. Good evening. So yes, this report updates the committee on the progress made in the last quarter in delivering the council's counter-fraud strategy. As reported on previous committee meetings, the strategy this year obviously considered the change in risk with the introduction of other financial schemes in the council as part of the overall COVID-19 financial packages, the most significant of which is the grant schemes. Point 3.1 on page 124 of the agenda pack outlines the performance of the service against that strategy. Members will notice there's a steady flow of cases that continue to be received by the service throughout that period in the last quarter, with continued operations taking place to explore those reports and obviously investigate the allegations made. At the last committee, I explained that a large part of the work undertaken this year so far has been in collaboration with our colleagues in our revenues team. And obviously this team is responsible for administering the COVID-19 COVID grants that have been given out to our local businesses. And you'll note in 3.1 that the measures we put in place to prevent fraud happening and actually prevent the fraud entering our system has prevented £300,000 worth of potential loss to the council. And that particular work was piloting a new preventative tool that we'd explored the year before and rolled it out through the scheme to make sure that our customer application points utilise third-party verification. Obviously, part of that success, we're now exploring testing that scheme and that system across other customer contact points in the council to see where we could potentially prevent fraud entering the system. And obviously that is part of the wider strategy, Appendix 1, where we're looking to use technology more fluidly through the council to make sure that we're preventive rather than chasing it down as we move forward. And I'm, of course, happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, I'm looking at paragraph 3.1 on the various types of fraud, and money laundering is £1.8 million, which is well over half of the total. Can you just give us maybe one example of money laundering? I just can't seem to connect it with council. Thank you.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, effectively, we are the council's central team that has powers to deal with money laundering. Now, where that relates to council activity is where there is an enforcement team in the council that investigates perhaps planning enforcement offences, and part of that planning enforcement offence may include the person benefiting from that financial crime they've taken place. So in this particular case, without going into too much detail, someone had expanded a commercial business without planning permission. They then earned money from that unlawful activity, and the money laundering part is them then using that money for their own financial gain, and that's the money laundering offence of the council. So yeah, it's not us being a vehicle for money laundering, it's us investigating it because we have a statutory duty to do so as part of our wider enforcement practice.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Collins, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, please, Chair. David, good evening. Page 124, there's a footnote. It says the COVID-19 incident has severely affected the judicial system, causing significant delays. This has seen criminal casework stop at the point of litigation being finalised. No information is yet provided by the Ministry of Justice on when that position will change. Do we have any idea of how much money that is tied up waiting for the litigation to go through, please?
Quite a large amount, actually. So if we look at the 2.2 million, I'd probably suggest that probably about 70% of that is tied up in judicial outcomes. Obviously, it's a significant amount. We're not the only public body that's affected by this. We work on a number of forums, including the Insolvency Service, HMRC, and of course policing. And they are trying to open up these additional court sessions across the country, and perhaps doing late sessions in Crown Courts and Magistrates Courts to clear the backlog. But unfortunately, we're just in the queue, and as soon as our casework gets heard, we can obviously then get the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So, yeah, we're part of that discussion with MOJ, and yeah, we're just part of the scheme going forward.
Okay, thank you very much. It's really something that's out of your control, isn't it?
Unfortunately, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further question? No further questions.
Nobody else has got their hand up, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So with regards to the counter fraud and investigation quarterly update, quarter number 3. The recommendations are that the Standards and Audit Committee comments on the performance of the Counter Fraud and Investigation Department, and would we all like to confirm that that has been the case? I, for one, will.
Confirm, Councillor Collins.
Confirm, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on then to agenda item number 8. Well, I won't go into the page bit. This is the annual review.
Item 9, Chair.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting it all wrong, aren't I? Item number 9. Yes, the annual review of risk and opportunity management and the policy, strategy and framework. And this is a report of Andy Owen. So we're ready to hear your report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. To enable Standards and Audit Committee to consider the effectiveness of the Council's risk and opportunity management arrangements, a review against the national model of good practice for risk management is undertaken and the results presented on an annual basis. The report shows the outcome of the exercise. And in table 2.5, which is on page 130, that shows the results against the model. And the Council has attained level 4 embedded and integrated for both the enabler and the results criteria under the model. The table in 3.1, which is on page 131, shows Thurrock scores and the progress against the model for the years 2011 to 2020. And what the overall review has revealed is that for all 7 strands, the Council has attained level 4, embedded and integrated. And for all the 7 strands, the Council scores are the same as the previous year's results. Appendix 1, which is pages 134 to 135, that provides an outline of the current ROM activity, risk and opportunity management activity, and the proposals to maintain and embed the practice in the coming year. And as part of the exercise, a review of the Council's risk and opportunity management policy, strategy and framework was undertaken, and some minor changes made to update the document. Examples of that are things like changes to job titles, and the revised document is included under Appendix 2, which is on pages 136 to 144 of the papers. That provides a summary of the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, well, I haven't actually got any questions. I'm just reasonably impressed with the table on the top of page 131. And if you compare 2011 to 2020, every single item there from A through to G is on a plus, and I'd just like to say that looks like good news. Thank you very much.
Councillor Collins, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Annie, just looking at page 163, I mean, the whole report is well put together, and thank you for its detail. This one just took me on because I'm involved in care work. And there's a risk of market failure remains extremely high, apparently. I have heard of care homes in other boroughs closing down. Are we likely to be taking on those particular residents in Thurrock?
Councillor Collins,
excuse me, did you say page 163?
I think we may have jumped onto the next agenda item.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Apologise. So in other words, no, in that case, I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Kent, then, would you like to ask your questions?
Thank you, Chair. On page 131, on the table at the top of the page, the Chair said about it's positive the move from 2011 to 2020 as all numbers have increased, but the last sort of 4 or 5 years, most of the numbers have remained the same. Looking at trying to improve as a council overall in all the areas that we work in, have we got a programme of how we could like improve these scores? I know they're in their 70s anyway, but to move them on to the next level, we seem to be really sort of consistent the last few years. Is there things we can do to get onto the next stage up, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I say it's something that obviously we've looked at, and like you say, we are a little bit static over the last couple of years. Some of that comes down to perhaps the corporate centre and the capacity that we've got within the corporate centre. But I think there are elements of the framework and the systems and processes that we could look at to maybe sneak a little bit perhaps on some of the scores. But to be honest, I think to really try and push into the higher level, it would take some quite a bit of action, I feel. But I say, I think we could perhaps look at maybe just sneaking a little bit better against the framework.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't know if how we compare with other authorities on that are assessing themselves to get on this system, to see whether we can sort of are in a position to sort of improve even more. That was why I asked the question.
Yeah, I think it's something that we can look at and obviously try to address that in the coming year. I think with the capacity and resource that we've actually got, I think on the level 4 we're doing well. But yes, we can look at trying to just making them small improvements, I think.
Okay, thank you.
There's no more hands, Chair.
Okay then, thank you very much. So with regard to the annual review of risk and opportunity management and the policy, strategy and framework, which is item number 9 on our agenda, the recommendation is that the Standards and Audit Committee note the results of the review, the current ROM activity and proposals to maintain and improve the practice across the organisation, and that the Standards and Audit Committee note and approve the updated ROM policy, strategy and framework. Are we both okay? Sorry, are we all okay to approve both of those recommendations?
Yeah.
I, for one, am.
Both noted. Thanks, Chair. Councillor Collins.
Yes, Chair.
Okay then, thank you very much. So we're now moving on to agenda item 10, which is in Q4 review of the Strategic Corporate Risk and Opportunity Register. And this is the report of Andy Owen. So we're all ready to hear Andy's report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. To enable the committee to consider the effectiveness of the risk and opportunity management arrangement, the report is presented on a biannual basis and provides details of how the key risks and opportunities facing the council are identified and managed. The report outlines the outcome of the in-Q4 review, which was carried out between January and February. It involved myself working with services, department management teams, performance board and directors board to review the register. And the outcome of the review is shown in Appendix 1 and 2 of the report. Appendix 1, which is pages 157 to 158 of the agenda papers, is a dashboard table which provides a summary of the items contained in the register mapped against the council priorities. In Appendix 2, pages 159 to 190 of the agenda papers, is the Risk and Opportunities in Focus report, which contains the higher priority items identified by the review, and the summary of the position for each of the in focus items is included under section 3.3 of the report, which starts at the middle of page 147. The rationale for items being in focus is based on the numeric value of the rating, so 16s or 12 automatically become in focus. Any 9s or 8 are considered on a case-by-case basis. For the committee's information, the criteria guide for impact and likelihood levels are included under Appendix 3, which shows the guidelines used to rate and prioritise the items, and that's on pages 191 to 192. Including the report it mentions that a number of the risks and opportunities on management response arrangements have been impacted by the pandemic situation, and the effects on the items are reflected in the report. And this is mainly picked up under Appendix 2 and Section 3.3 of the reports. The next review is the refresh exercise, and this will enable any changes to be fully considered and incorporated in the register. That's a summary of the report, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm looking at the bottom paragraph, actually, on the very first page, at the bottom of 145, in which it says the register is due to be refreshed in the next review, and this will enable the impacts of the pandemic situation to be fully considered. So I think that's a very, very, very valid point. Otherwise, you sort of feel as though you're going to be using a crystal ball to make projections regarding accounting. And I think if we bear that in mind, we can have a little bit of flexibility. Thank you very much.
Councillor Collins, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Chair. It's to Andy Owen. It's the same question as I asked you before, but I turned the page over too much. I'm going to amend it slightly, because on page 148, you were talking about the risk of market failure in adult social care. That's stability and market failure risk 2. And I understand there is a care home in Basildon that may or may not be being closed. How close to we are or that sort of thing happening? 1, in Thurrock, and 2, are we expected to take residents from these care homes if they fail in other boroughs, please?
We will sort of try to answer some of that, Councillor Collins, but the actual risk itself is not really my sort of area of expertise and responsibility.
I'll come in, Andy.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
And if that helps, thanks, Chair. I think just a couple of comments. I certainly can't answer the bit as to whether we are likely to have to take in any additional residents. The second part of your question from care homes outside of our borough. That's a question we can ask in terms of the risk of that. In terms of the risk of failure of care homes within the borough, I think we can go back to before COVID. What we know is it's a very fragile market. Our rates have been quite low. We are one of the lowest spending authorities in the country in terms of adult social care. And there was market failure before COVID came along, with at least 2 care homes from memory, and where we actually had to transfer external staff back into the council to carry on and take over those particular homes ourselves to be able to do it. A lot of the additional expenditure that's been spent on adult social care during the COVID period has been more around resilience than anything else. So increasing fees, being able to support those businesses with extra PPE, for instance, that's been required. So certainly the payments have been more around resilience to try and protect the council from that. To my knowledge, so I can't say that this is fact, my knowledge at the moment that's come through me, I'm not aware of anything imminently. Certainly, I am aware that the payments we've made have been have supported that resilience. We've got twice as much growth in the medium-term financial strategy budget for next year as well that we would normally have, and that's therefore going on top of the additional payments that we've already made this year as well. So we're doing our best to try and support that resilience. So nothing that I'm aware of at the moment, certainly, but it's always going to be a threat, and it was before COVID came along.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you, Chair. No further questions.
Okay, has anyone else got any questions?
No more hands up, Chair.
Okay, so moving forward to the recommendations in the Q4 review of the Strategic Corporate Risk and Opportunity Register agenda, there's 2 recommendations, and they are that the Standards and Audit Committee note the items and details contained in the dashboard Appendix 1, and the Standards and Audit Committee note the In Focus report, Appendix 2, which highlights the higher priority items identified by the review. Are we all happy to approve the recommendations or note that we've seen them? Thank you. I am.
Noted, Chair. Councillor Collins.
Noted, Chair.
Thank you. So given that one, then we can now move on to item number 11 on the agenda, which is the Internal Audit Progress Report 2020 to 2021. And this is the report of Gary Clifford. Thank you. We welcome your report, Gary.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the latest Internal Audit Progress Report. The Internal Audit Plan was agreed with the Standards and Audit Committee at the meeting in July last year. And this report actually covers final reports issued since the last progress report at the November committee. On page 194, para 3.3, we finalised 4 reports during that period. 2 were assurance reports and both received green positive opinions. They covered council tax and the arboriculture's new tree management software system, which has been implemented against the background of the pandemic. So a good result to get a green report on that. Para 3.4, the other 2 reports, one was a consultancy report to check and confirm the environmental services quality management system as part of the BSI ISO 9001 accreditation process, and we only highlighted one minor issue on that. The other report was an advisory review of project management, so we didn't provide an assurance opinion, but we did make recommendations which were accepted by management, and progress has and is being made to implement those. I've checked recently on that, so again, positive. Para 3.5, as we always do at this time of the year, the team have focused on getting work completed reports to draft stage, and this outstanding work will be reported as part of the progress report at the next meeting. On page 198, the Appendix 1, the table gives a breakdown of work finalised and draft reports and work in progress. It includes the number of recommendations made against the final reports and their ratings. At the bottom of the page, we continue to support the Troubled Families Programme, and we also have been undertaking work providing support, advice and guidance to various services across the council. Some related to changes of controls around that have been brought about due to the pandemic. As previously reported, the pandemic has had a significant impact on our access to frontline service staff and their availability. As a result of that, it's been agreed with Sean as the Director of Finance, Corporate Director of Finance, Governance and Property, that will have a 3 to 6 month plan moving forward, which will provide us with better flexibility to proactively react to changing priorities. In terms of recruitment, it is intended to start recruitment during 21-22 to help address our resourcing issues. And on page 200 to 202, we provided details of the high and medium recommendations on the 4 reports finalised and management responses on the implementation of those recommendations. So happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm looking at page 198 in the table showing various things, and with the prior to that on page 194 it tells you what green, amber, red and red mean in terms of assurance, but on the project management one, which is the 3rd item down, the opinion is advisory. What does that actually mean? Does it mean that it's good or bad? Thank you.
what an advisory report does, Chair, is it's generally done in consultation with the service rather than something that's that we've actually planned to do at the beginning of the year. So it was identified that there were issues with project management. A project management team was set up to look at that, and they asked us to come and look at how and comment on the and provide advice around the process that they'd used. So an advisory review tends to be more service driven rather than risk or internal audit driven.
Okay, thank you very much. Has anyone else got any questions or clarification requests? Okay then, so moving on, this is the item number 11 on tonight's agenda, which is the Internal Audit Progress Report 2020-2021. The recommendation is that we consider the reports issued and the work being carried out by the internal audit in relation to 2021 audit plan. Are we all okay to say that we approve when we've noted everything? I am.
Approved. Yeah, approved, Councillor Collins.
Noted, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so moving on to item number 12, which is the Internal Audit Strategy 2020-2021 to 2022/23 and the Annual Internal Audit Plan 2021/22. And this is going to be presented by Gary Clifford. So we welcome your report, Gary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Last year, we undertook a comprehensive audit needs assessment to develop a new 3-year strategy. However, as the impact of the pandemic started to emerge, it became obvious that priorities, working practices, etc., were changing. As a result, and due to the continuing impact of the pandemic, it was agreed with Sean that a 3 to 6 month plan would enable the service to react proactively to changes in risks and priorities. What we're asking the Standards and Audit Committee to do is to receive and agree the plan for 21/22. At the bottom of page 203 and page 204, para 2.1 provides details of the process that we followed, those people we interviewed as part of the audit needs assessment. The strategy remains largely unchanged, but the plan, as we said, is a 3 to 6 month rolling plan. 3.1, that just highlights that during the year we actually lost an experienced member of staff, redeployed one of the team to the Thurrock coronavirus community action team, and a member of the team was actually positive with COVID and had to take some time off. So all of that impacted on the previous year's plan. If I could take you to Appendix 1 on page 209, that starts off with the definition of the role of internal audit and explains a number of factors. I can't read my own, oh right, that influence our coverage, I can't read my own writing, and the process followed in preparing the strategy and plan. It also states that the Chief Internal Auditor and or Sean as Corporate Director of Finance, Governance and Property can approve changes to the plan, but these must be reported to Standards on Audit Committee as part of the progress reporting arrangements. At the bottom of the page, it states we'll carry out follow-up work for high-level recommendations and notes that the emphasis on savings has been exacerbated by the pandemic. So those are things we had to take into account. On page 212, that states how we will liaise with other assurance providers, such as BDR, external auditors, and other assurance providers who, where applicable, such as Ofsted and CQC. Page 213, some of the main, the table identifies some of the main external and internal factors that are known and emerging that the council faces. On page 214 to 224, we present the 3-year strategy, which, as I said, has changed little from last year. What's of more interest probably is on page 225 to 231, where we present the 3 to 6 month plan. Other work has been left in the plan, but with dates to be agreed. So it's the 3 to 6 month plan, but we roll forward and pick up that other work as we go. The plan is based on the current resourcing arrangements. On page 225, we'd just like to bring your attention to 3 audits that were not included in the original strategy. 2 of these, financial sustainability and COVID-19 grant certification, have been added as a result of the pandemic. Financial sustainability will look at the resilience of the council's financial arrangements following the additional financial pressures brought to the council as a result of the pandemic. And the COVID-19 grants work, there's likely to be some internal audit involvement in providing assurance around spend on ring-fence grants, and potentially we'll have to do some sign-off on those grants, but it's not clear from central government yet what work that will involve. The 3rd audit we added was around climate change, which is an increasing government priority, and that will look at what the council's process and procedures currently are to ensure it meets the target of being carbon neutral by 2050. So happy to take any questions.
Yes, thanks for your report. I'm looking at one of the appendices on page 215, and it's the bottom line of the first block where it says unaccompanied asylum seekers, and it says payments may be made to asylum seekers who have had their applications rejected and are no longer entitled to get assistance from the council. Does that mean that the council are going to make them payments after they've rejected paying the asylum seeker, or does it mean another agency is going to pay them after we've refused it? Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I'm just having to go to a separate screen to pick up the bit you're talking about. What page was it on?
Yes, sorry, it's on page 215, and it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th sort of box of statements down, just above the second green line, where it's the subtitle is unaccompanied asylum seekers, and it's saying, yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, what it is with the unaccompanied asylum seekers, they have to go through an application process. If that application is rejected, they would no longer be entitled to get assistance from the council. They would have to get assistance from elsewhere. So I'm assuming sort of the immigration people.
Okay, thank you very much. That's clearly sorted that out.
No more hands, Chair.
So are there any other questions? No. So with regard to the internal audit strategy 2020-2021 to 2022-23 and the annual internal audit plan of 2021 to 22, the recommendation is that the Standards and Audit Committee receive and agree the internal audit plan as above. Are we all in agreement with that, please? I am.
Agreed.
Agreed, Chair.
Okay, so we're now going to be moving on to agenda item number 13, which is an investment briefing from Sean Clark. So we're ready to hear your presentation, Sean. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Potter, and it is actually me this time as well. So this has been this is the latest of a series of reports that you've had on this. We put the first one out in June, and it simply shows the current position of the council's borrowing and investment levels at its highest levels. I'd point first of all the table at 2.5. That shows that the council's borrowing has got gross borrowing of about 1.4 billion, but about 1.1 billion of that will be repayable, leaving us a net debt of about 300 million. Paragraph 2.6 shows that actually, in terms of comparisons, the first time we reported this to the committee, our gross debt is now £87 million less than that time back in June 2020, but that we continue to achieve circa 30 to 35 million pounds worth of surplus profit, if you like, from the investments that we carry out. And then finally, this has been a standing comment all the way through. At paragraph 2.11, there's still been no material adverse impact from the start of the COVID pandemic on the council's investment, and income streams have remained stable throughout this time. So, as I say, this is a straightforward update from previous reports, and happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, just an observation, really. I'm looking at paragraphs 2.6 and, oh, cracky, where is it? Another one regarding the COVID impact that we're dealing with. And I'm quite pleased that we've not been, really, really severely impacted by it, and we are coping with it very well. Thank you very much.
Councillor Collins, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, please, Jenny and Chair. I'd just like to add my appreciation to the Chair's appreciation of avoiding the terrible ravages we would have faced if we'd had conventionally invested in shopping centres, airports, etc. during this particular time. In the end, whether it was meant to or not, it was very far-sighted. I know this is going to be coming to an end, but you've actually sort of delivered a strong income to this council, and I'd like to say well done and thank you very much for your foresight and good stewardship.
No more hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on then, this was the investment briefing, which is agenda item number 13. And the recommendation is that the Standard and Audits Committee note the report and sort of obviously say that we've looked at it and understood it and taken it in. I can go with that recommendation. Thank you.
Noted.
Noted, Chair.
Thank you then. So moving on. This is item number 14 on tonight's agenda, and it is a report on the A13 widening project presented by Anna Eastgate. So we're waiting to hear your update, Anna. Thank you.
Chair, I'm afraid you've got Sean Clark again for this one and the Stamford La Hope project. A couple of officers from the Place Directorate have had to give apologies for personal reasons. So again, this was a request of Councillor Rice as the chair, and this is the same for Stamford La Hope about bringing these projects forward, high profile, and obviously a lot of comments that have been made about them from members and within the media and so on as well. So as a profile, they were brought to this committee, not because the technical side of this and more detail is carried out by Planning and Transportation and Regeneration, but it comes here because of the governance arrangements. So briefly on the A13, this is an update again since the last meeting that you've had, and you will be aware of the historic nature of the challenges on this project, both in terms of programme and budget. Significant progress was being made in the run-up to the Christmas break, but then the site was impacted by a COVID breakout consistent with the new, more virulent strain of COVID, and under the advice of the public health team, the council's public health team, the site was closed early for Christmas. There has been progress, though, with the major earthworks largely complete now and resurfacing works underway. And last weekend saw the demolition of the former Horndon Bridge. In terms of local economic development support, there has been 8.7 million spent with local suppliers within a 10-mile radius of the site. The current accepted programme is due to complete in March 2022, but officers are currently negotiating and in discussions with the contractors about ways that we can both reduce cost and actually accelerate that timeline. Finally, members have previously asked about how the overspend will be met. We are continuing negotiations and discussions with a number of different third parties, and we have actually got a report with the Southeast Local Enterprise Partnership tomorrow for additional funding to support any overspends that have come about through COVID. I think that's the update I wanted to give, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, given it was quite a short space of time since the last update, I haven't got any questions, but I would like to comment that with regard to the COVID pandemic, I think I and all the residents of Thurrock would approve any delay that would save any of the workers catching COVID and giving it to their families, etc. So I think we ought to put the health of humans before that, and I agree with that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Kent, would you like to ask your questions?
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. On the, hang on, I've just lost my page. Right, sorry. Regarding the funding gap, I know you said that the council is going to set up tomorrow with regards to the extra costs the COVID pandemic has put on the project to ask for funding to cover that. If you take the COVID, that part out of the equation, there's still a funding gap. Have we got any further on where we're going to be able to get the money for the funding gap that existed before the COVID pandemic hit, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think what I just touched on, Councillor Kent, in my introduction was that we are having ongoing discussions with a number of different third parties in trying to identify further contributions. We are also still looking at discussions with our legal advisors in terms of a lot of the advice that we previously obtained that caused some of the initial problems on the site. In terms of some of the third parties that we're talking to, this includes the DFT, Highways England, as well as CELOP as well. So a number of conversations going on, and as and when we get any responses and results from those discussions, we'll obviously report that going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay then, so there are no more questions or comments to be raised. Thank you. So moving on then, with respect to agenda item 14, the A13 widening project.
Sorry, Chair, did you want to just do the recommendation on that report?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Oh,
sorry, that's what I was about to do.
Sorry, Chair.
That's okay. With regard to that, the recommendation is that we confirm that we've read the notes and understood the comments and listened to the statements by the presenter, and I'm okay to agree with that. Thank you.
Agreed.
Noted, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we're now moving on to agenda item 15, which is the Stanford Hope Transport Project, and this is going to be presented by probably not Anna Eastgate. So is it going to be Sean?
Me again, Chair. We're just doing our best to confuse you tonight.
Oh no, and you're doing very well. Thank you.
So again, as in a similar way to the last report, this was brought forward, because of its profile, and we've reported on this several times over the last few months. And again, it was considered by PTR in recent weeks as well. So members are aware of the historic nature of the challenges on this project in terms of the earlier design and the pause and review exercise that was undertaken in September 2019. And that actually divided the scheme into two phases. The first phase is the station site, with the second being the actual transport hub. The station site was considered by Planning Committee in February, just a few weeks ago, with an officer recommendation to approve. But the application was deferred by the Planning Committee for the reasons set out at paragraph 3.1 in the report. The grant of planning permission was also required to be able to issue tender documents to the framework contractors identified to save time in undertaking full procurement exercise. So there will be an impact on overall time from that delay on the planning permission. The original programme completion date for both phases 1 and 2 was to complete in September 2022, but that's now very much going to depend on obtaining planning permission over the coming weeks or months, and then being able to get through to our tender process and being able to access the appropriate framework to be able to do so. In terms of budget, there have been a number of questions around spend to date, including one that I had to respond to in writing today to the corporate ONS. And so just for this committee, about circa 11 million has been spent on the scheme to date, but the majority of that sum has been spent on the purchase of the Daybreak site and also the demolition of the station. The rest of the scheme is being designed within the budget envelope, but obviously I've just mentioned possible concerns around delays and what impact that may have. Similar to the A13 though, we are going out and talking to other third parties, and we are looking at Section 106 contributions and Highways England and other grants that also contribute towards net zero carbon schemes to see whether we can get further contributions towards the overall scheme. That's as much as I wanted to say on this one, Chair.
Well, thank you very much. I don't have any questions or comments to raise on this subject, so we'll move it on to the other two councillors if they wish to contribute.
You have no hands, Chair.
Okay then, so with regard to the Stamfordley Hope Transport Project, the recommendation is that the Standards and Audit Committee notes and comments on the content of the report. And I'm happy to say that I've listened to what they've said and I've understood what they've been saying.
Noted.
Noted, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So the last item on the agenda is the works programme. Now, as you know, I've never chaired this committee before. I'm the vice chair. So can I just say that that is the work programme, and are we all happy with that?
That's fine, Chair. What will happen for the next municipal year is that we will discuss with officers and the new chair the work programme going forward. But a lot of these reports are statutory, so they will be probably the same.
Okay then, so are we in a position to conclude the meeting?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to, before we go, thank all the officers for the way they present stuff. You can see that they're not sort of just doing it as a part-time, oh, I'm here to make a few bob. They are very good and very committed to working with the council and subsequently the residents of Thurrock. So thank you all and good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good night.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.